Hello and welcome to our session on debating sustainability. Does impact matter? We are members of the Entrepreneurs Organization, a global business association of over 15,000 members across 60 countries with 200 chapters, all of us active business owners and entrepreneurs. And in today's session, we are going to be debating sustainability. I'm going to be your host and moderator, Ryan Villanueva. I'm a business owner and I'm based out of Boston. My business is in K-12 education. I teach students about the world's most important problems, namely the Sustainable Development Goals and what we need to do to solve them. And within EO, I am the champion and ambassador for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to help other entrepreneurs understand the goals and integrate sustainability in their businesses. And I'm joined here by a panel of EO members who are, I'm going to share who they are, their businesses, a little about them, and more importantly, this is a debate. So these three people have been carefully selected because they represent different perspectives on sustainability within the entrepreneurship community and within our membership. So let me introduce them and the perspective. So firstly, we're joined by Nikhil. Nikhil from both Sri Lanka and the United Kingdom. Was wave Nikhil. He's director of the Hirda Ramani Group, which designs, manufactures, and exports clothing to renowned clients around the world. And Nikhil represents the perspective of the catalyst, the disruptor for change, who believes that sustainability just needs to happen, that it's a growing trend and businesses need to know what to do with it or they will be disrupted and they need to adapt accordingly. We're also joined by James Kierstead, who's dialing in from Canada. James is responsible for managing the vision and growth of Levin Electronics, developing and executing long-term corporate strategies and building relationships with partners, stakeholders, and investors. And James is here because he's the skeptic. He's the one who believes that sustainability, social impact, look, they might be trends, but we can do that in our personal lives through personal philanthropy. Why do we need to do this in our businesses? What is the business case for that? So James represents that perspective, and thank you, James, for joining us on this. I know it goes against your instincts, but is a very valuable perspective to be represented.
I'm feeling very skeptical right now.
Again, very important voice, James. And then thirdly, we are joined by Christina Calvo, who joins us from Costa Rica, 22 years in the travel industry, leading a company through sustainable tourism as its core strategy. And Christina represents the voice of the pragmatist who believes that sustainability and social impact are important if we can align them with a business's objectives and profitability. So very interesting perspective from a pragmatic perspective. Thank you for joining us, Christina. So we got Nikhil, the catalyst disruptor. You've got James, the skeptical, the cynic, and we got Christina, the pragmatist. And so they're going to represent these different perspectives, and we're going to debate this. I'm going to ask a series of questions to our panelists, and at the end of our session today, which will end in about 25 minutes, I'm going to ask you, the audience, to vote who won our debate on sustainability. So here we go. My opening question to all the panelists is, why should entrepreneurs and business owners care about sustainability and social impact in their businesses? So let's hear first from Nikhil, the catalyst.
Well, hi everyone. I honestly feel that if you don't have a sustainable business, you just won't be in business going forward. I think we're beginning to see trends changing. Young people, millennials. I'm in the fashion industry, and we're beginning to see that millennials only want to be associated with companies that have sustainability credentials. I think sustainability is not really an option anymore. I think we've all experienced in the last year with the pandemic, why it's important from a social sustainability side. I think we're beginning to see. You can see ESG. ESG is the biggest topic in investment at the moment. Environment, social, and governance. It's all around sustainability. The last week, we've seen a G7 summit, all talking about climate change. We've got COP26 this year. It's really, I mean, legislation is also going to come into play around sustainability. So for me, I honestly think there's no option. I think we've got to be sustainable. My business, I'm in the fashion industry. The fashion industry itself is one of the most polluting industries in the world. If it was a country, it'd be the world's fourth largest CO2 emission producer. 7,000 liters of water goes into a pair of jeans. So I think there's all sorts of elements as to why we need to do it. We need to think about long term. We need to think about our businesses. And as I say, I sort of repeat my opening statement. If you don't practice sustainability, you just won't be in business going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nikhil. Again, our catalyst, very strong opening statement. Let's shift over to the cynic, the skeptic, James. James, please give us, why should entrepreneurs care about impact in their businesses?
So first of all, I want to be really clear that I believe in sustainability. I think it's really important for us as individuals to try and make a better world for our children and their children. However, in business, I'm not so sure, especially businesses of my size and many of the entrepreneurs that I know, that we can make sustainability a priority. We're not such a big business that we can afford to implement all the changes necessary to meet those UN SDGs and be sustainable in all ways. My biggest fear is that it would yet be another initiative that could draw focus away from our really limited resources that could really negatively impact our business. And if our business fails, well, that's not very sustainable.
Okay. All right. I think some very strong objections coming from James. Again, the cynic, the skeptical kind of point of view on this. Thank you very much, James. And now let's shift it over to Christina, our pragmatist. Christina, why should entrepreneurs integrate sustainability into their businesses?
Yeah. Like Nikhil was saying, trends and in general, all the habits, especially after the pandemic, has been changing, right? There's a general tendency towards well-being with the consumer, eating better, getting much more involved with nature. There's a lot going on with the stocks, the stock market, the investments, the EVs, all the fundings, the green funds, the sharing economy, circular economy, like everything is shifting, right? So from the consumer perspective, those changes are happening. So us as business owners, we really have to adapt to the consumer. It has been a long time since businesses were able to actually do whatever they want without taking into consideration what actually the consumer is requesting, right? It's quite the other way around. We have to adapt our business to what the consumers are looking for, right? So from the company perspective, I think that the biggest mindset shift in the mindset that we have to do is understanding that sustainability is not philanthropy. And for many years, we have treated sustainability as if it were philanthropy and not putting sustainability as a strategy. Sustainability, as James was saying very properly, he says, if I go out of business, I am not sustainable, right? So the environmental part and the sustainable goals is part of that strategy as well, not only the financial part. So that is why I think it's very important from a company perspective to understand sustainability as a strategy. This way you will see financial, operational cost efficiency, which is very important. You will have tax incentives, subsidies, attract better talents, right? So it's actually an upward spiral once you start treating sustainability as a strategy in business.
Okay, interesting. Sustainability as a business strategy. That is super, super interesting. So thank you, Christina, for that. Thank you all of our panelists for this opening statement. And I am going to continue with a few more questions that target each of these different kind of arguments. But first, if you're in Hopin, check out the polls next to the chat button. So you can check it out. Sherry from the UN Global Compact has been posting some questions for you. And she just posted a question. This is to the audience now. Based on the statements that you just heard, again, Nikhil, he's the catalyst. James, the skeptic. Christina, the pragmatist. Who had the most compelling opening statement? I just kind of want to know. Go take a moment to just click one of those three. Again, Nikhil is the catalyst. James is the skeptic. Christina is the pragmatist. And I'm kind of curious to know, based on your votes, who you think had the strongest kind of opening salvo. Go take, another 30 seconds or so. And for the sake of our panelists, like these next questions, they're going to be like rapid fire. You're going to have like 60 seconds speaking time on this one. I actually have a gavel for this, so if I need to, I can gavel you down. And with that, I'm looking at the votes right now. Okay, interesting from what I'm seeing here. So this is kind of like a leading indicator for who's winning our debate, which I'll ask as our last question tonight. The catalyst and the skeptic are currently tied with 14% of the vote each. Oh, wait. Oh, thank you. More people are voting. Okay, so the catalyst is at 14%. The skeptic is at 24%. And the pragmatist is currently in the lead with 62% of the votes on that last question. All right. Okay, interesting. We're kind of seeing where people lie. And maybe, based on people's own perspectives coming into this. Let me ask this next question. This one's targeted to the catalyst. So Nikhil, who's our catalyst, right? You made, this argument that businesses need to go in the direction of sustainability. There's a big trend. Governments are going to make this happen anyway, like compelling businesses to do this. But let me just ask you a very targeted question, which is isn't all this stuff a distraction from a business's true objective, which is to make a profit? And especially, as James said, like small businesses, SMBs, SMEs, right? If you're a big corporation, sure, you got the resources that you could funnel to a CSR or sustainability program. But if you're a small business, right, then you don't have those resources necessarily. Like you probably don't have those resources. You need to focus on just making a profit. So how do you speak to that? How do you speak to the small business owners when you say we have to create sustainability?
Well, as I said, I think there's a business achievement in terms of a business goal. And I think from our business, where we've seen in producing clothing, we've actually seen some really good benefits from being sustainable that actually links to profitability, less retention, well-being, because I think when we look at sustainability, we also need to understand the definition of sustainability. I think you'll get many different definitions of sustainability out there. And I think from the point of view of the environmental side, but also the social side, well-being, health, these are all elements of sustainability. And what we see in our business is that, by actually adopting the triple bottom line, we actually see the benefits to the profitability of the business as well. And to be able to implement this. And I think in terms of your point, in terms of investment, I think there is a challenge when it comes to investment and understanding that element. But I think we've also got to look at the long term and understand. I think I think one of the challenges is maybe the funding and how can businesses be more sustainable. And this is where the funding that's now out there with ESG that is beginning to impact wider change in sustainability for SMEs.
Okay, thank you very much, Akil. Let's get some quick 30-second reaction from James first, and then Christina. James, what's your response to that?
I firmly believe that a business's focus should be on profitability. It needs to be on making sure that their bottom line is strong, that we keep our people employed, and our customers and shareholders happy. No good can come from us losing focus and potentially going out of business and costing jobs.
Okay. All right. Clear, succinct answer. Thanks, James. Christina?
Every time I'm around skeptics, I love having numbers, right? So I was seeing a report from McKinsey, right, that was saying that 60%, small medium-sized businesses that implemented sustainable practices within their companies, which means actually improving their operations, improving their cost, their efficiency, they actually increase their operating profits 60%, right? So that's a very important thing to take into consideration. I can tell you a couple of examples from my own, right? One, I always love talking about this, where our office is 100% solar panel, right? Our main office in Costa Rica. At the beginning, we had, of course, the investment of changing to solar panels, but because of all the helps and financial aid that it's being able to install those panels, we were spending the exact same amount as we were regularly spending on our electricity bill for a while, and now we are 100% connected to the grid, right? And we have like a minimum spend of $10 or not even $15 a month on electricity, right? So if we translate that into our cost, and our operating profits, then it's a very big a very big change there.
Okay.
Did you amortize all those costs out to the front-loaded costs of actually installing the system, though, Christina?
So I'm going to pause on that before we get a little bit of the follow-up, some cross thing. Christina, you'll have a chance to respond to that. And James, you're going to get the next question. But before I go into that, again, if you just joined us, Sherry has dropped into the poll. So check out the poll link, right? Do you agree with the, first, the catalyst? So again, Nikhil is the catalyst, right? And he's making this argument about sustainability and how we businesses just need to integrate it. And there's a lot of benefits to integrating it. So I'm curious if whether or not the audience agrees with the catalyst, if you agree, disagree, or if you're unsure, you're on the fence, which is totally cool. Go and check that out and take that vote there. And while people are voting on that question, my next question is going to go to James, the skeptic / cynic. So James, yeah, you've been trying to instigate a bit of debate here, which is the point of this thing, which is cool. So let me flip this question on you, right? You're the skeptic. You're like, businesses need to focus purely on, they focus on profit. They're creating jobs. Let me ask you this. Isn't it short-sighted to only focus on profit? Right. And, you're trying to make an argument about the financial sustainability of companies. Isn't that financial sustainability inherently tied to environmental, social sustainability? And even what you said about creating jobs, that's one of the sustainable development goals, is decent work and economic growth. So everything you're saying about business need to focus on profit, doesn't that actually just tie into truly creating sustainability?
So, in fairness, there are a number, there's 17 UN SDGs, right? And in business, we're focused on our very specific areas, right? How do we deliver the products to our customers that they're looking for? How do we generate that at the least possible cost? How do we make sure that we're able to meet all of our obligations and in turn not impact that bottom line so that we can stay around in business? And mostly because of the size of our businesses, the biggest fear I have is we have limited resources. We have limited people capacity. We have limited cash capacity to go out and work on too many initiatives. So we have to stay very focused on what we do.
Okay. All right. As a business owner, I respect that. You got to stay highly tight and focused. Let's get some responses, first from Nikhil and then followed by Christina.
Well, as I say, I think that there are, as I say, benefits to being sustainability, to being sustainable. We've talked about that. And I think you've got to, again, you reiterate the point around the social side, about the well-being, the longer term. I think the key point was also legislation. I think the world is changing. And look, at the end of the day, you've also got to satisfy your customers. And this is what the world is becoming. You won't have a business if you're not adopting sustainable principles, because all your stakeholders are requesting it, from the government, from your customers, and even your employees. Decent working conditions, as you mentioned. So I think that from the responsibility of an entrepreneur is to invest in this, and you've got to think of you can look at short-term profits, but at the end of the day, if you want to have a sustainable business, you've got to look at adopting sustainability. Okay.
Thanks, Nikhil. And how about Christina?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important to start small, pretending to tackle the 17 goals all at once. Of course, one is overwhelming, and number two, it's unachievable, right? So it's very important to actually analyze. And this is where you go. It's as a business owner, it doesn't matter the size, but especially for small business owners, you go every day to your business and you try to improve things every day. It's how can I improve my marketing? How can I improve my sales? How can I improve my operations? It's the same thing like this. When you start to understand that line, then you go in and you say okay, how can I save money by changing, for example, the water faucets? You do that, it's a small change, and you're going to see savings. So you're going to make your CFO happy. It's oh my, I am actually doing some savings here. Then you're going to change your light bulbs. You change your light bulbs, you have. So it's small changes. And all of a sudden, 5 years go by, 6 years go by, and you haven't made a huge improvement and a huge impact. And that is why putting sustainability as a strategy actually works. But starting small for me, it's the key.
Okay. Thank you very much, Christina and Nikhil and James. So I'm curious. So James is making this argument that for businesses, small businesses, only so many resources, only so much focus. And James, you're making this argument that we got to stay focused, right? And in particular, focus on profitability.
Hyper competitive world out there. We can be taken over. We can lose our market position very easily if we're not always focused.
All right. So
you
I'm
can lose
curious.
if you're not sustainable either. So
okay. All right. Okay. We got some crosstalk on here, which is cool. I'm curious if the audience agrees with you, James. So if everybody checks out the polls, I want to know, do you agree with the skeptic, James? Again, do you agree? Do you disagree? Or are you unsure? So go ahead, check out those numbers and vote in there. So I can see all the results. I don't know if everybody else can see the results, and I'll lay out the results in a little bit. Okay.
I can't see anything.
All right. It's like a race or something. It's just like I'm just seeing the numbers. But before I give it all away, let's go to Christina. So I got this next question for Christina, our pragmatist, right? So Christina, you've been making this argument throughout our session that sustainability is good for business, that it's even a business strategy, that there are meaningful ways to integrate sustainability that lower costs. So let me push on that for a little bit, right? Especially leveraging what James is saying. That sounds good in theory, but is it realistic? Like, can a small business owner, an entrepreneur, pursue both profit and sustainability simultaneously? Doesn't it also become a distraction? Or can't they run into a situation where they have to choose between the two? It actually becomes an economic trade-off on whether or not I'm just going to be sustainable or I need to focus on, making a profit. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, first, it's just trying to, when James is talking about being focused, I totally agree. Like, if you just start trying to get into sustainability just because of following a trend, then you're going to go on a bad road. But if you start understanding your business and how can you improve your business and improve the practices of everything you do, then you start adding value. I'm going to give you, I love giving, I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was having dinner at a restaurant in Tulum, on Sunday night. And it was a restaurant that they, of course, because of the pandemic, they had a very, very hard situation. It's a couple, but they had a beautiful garden. So basically they didn't have a lot of money to do, to buy from the local farmers. They couldn't, they were really struggling, right? So what they did is that they made their own, they started growing their own vegetables there. They changed everything so that it's actually self-made. So that brought them the cost down a lot, right? But during the pandemic, what happened, because they wanted to have this farm to table concept, right? During the pandemic, since they were closed, they were able to start selling veggie boxes to the community, right? So because of a situation that they couldn't operate their business, but they already had a strategy where they wanted to give healthier products, grow their organic vegetables, etc., because of a situation that got them into a very, very difficult position where they couldn't have the restaurant open. They actually started a side business where they actually were selling the veggie boxes, right? And they were able to navigate the whole pandemic selling through this, and now they have an operating restaurant plus a side business, right? Mm-hmm. So those are the type of things that understanding as a business owner, how can you embrace you don't have to take, like I said before, 10 sustainable goals. You can start with one and say like, okay, I want to take one of this, understand my process, and how can I implement it and just make it better?
Okay. Thank you very much, Christina. I'm curious what the rest of the audience thinks. Share if you can post this poll to the chat, whether the audience agrees, disagrees, or is unsure with our pragmatist tonight, with Christina. And while people are voting, let's get some quick reactions. First from James, our cynic, and then Nikhil, our catalyst. James?
I'm feeling a little bit like a tortoise in a race with a rabbit right now. But
I know how that story turned out.
I don't really know what to say. Yes, it's a great example in this particular case. I think if we spread out these examples across, I wonder how many businesses are actually able to implement those sorts of changes in their business. You know, especially obviously COVID has created this opportunity for businesses to, well, not just an opportunity, but a major decline, but pivot their businesses, while many of us are looking at, well, how do we survive when, you know, we're struggling to get staff in here all the time because of restrictions. That's what, you know, I spend most of my time thinking about. How do I create a safe environment for the people that I have here? How do we make sure that, you know, no one gets sick or it transfers on to others? How do we keep our business running during this time? But I do applaud, you know, the people that were able to do a pivot in their business.
Okay, thanks a lot, James. Nikhil, our
so having the last word here, I look at it as a culture change. I look at it as and I agree with what Christina said about small wins. But I think that there has to be a culture of sustainability within the business. We've adopted that in our business. And through that, I think you can actually, you know, one of the most important SDGs, which I strongly believe is collaboration. It really is about working together. There is a lot of support out there. And I think we've seen that now, partnering organizations, you know, to help us in our journey. And there's funding, there's grants, but it has to be, you know, it has to be a sense of culture and passion of sustainability within the organization. And so I think that, yes, I mean, I agree there's got to be a financial reward. And we've talked about, you know, elements of how we can see financial rewards with some of the investments that we've made. But for SMEs and small and potentially now, I think there's a lot of opportunities, but the culture of the organization has to be one of sustainability.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We are nearing the end of our session time today, and we will end on time. And so we got our final poll question. Sherry, if you can post this to the chat, which is, who won today's debate? Right? We've heard a lot of different perspectives from Nikhil, again, our catalyst, our idealist here. We've heard a lot from James, our cynic, our skeptic, continuing to focus on profitability. And then you got Christina, our pragmatist, who is like, you can integrate sustainability and be profitable simultaneously. So very, very interesting perspectives here. So I'd love it. Everybody can take a moment to vote. I will announce the results in a minute. But before we conclude, I want to say thank you to everybody who attended today's session. Thank you to our panelists for participating in our debate. Thank you for playing your roles, your respective roles so well. James, I know you're a passionate champion for sustainability, actually, but thank you for stepping in to the skeptic role. For those of us who joined, halfway through, we are members of the Entrepreneurs Organization, doing our best to represent the voice of entrepreneurs globally. Over 15,000 members and business owners that we represent, and many of us are passionate about sustainability and impact. And so thank you, and thank you to the UN Global Compact for inviting us to be part of this event and create this for you tonight. So it's 5 o'clock. We're going to end on time, but before people hop off, the winner of the debate, with all the votes come in, I'm seeing the pragmatist has won by a landslide in our debate.
I knew I was feeling like a tortoise.
Thank you, audience.
Well done, Christina.
So great, very compelling.
Well done,
Thank you, James. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Ryan. It's amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
It's a hard stand.
It is, yeah, but very important and apparently very compelling to tonight's audience. So thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to everybody who attends tonight. I hope you got something valuable out of this that you can apply in your own role, your own company, your own business when it comes to sustainability. And if you want to connect with us, please, we'll drop some contact info in the chat to continue the conversation. But thank you and enjoy the rest of this week's UN Global Compact Summit. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
All right.